You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Monday the 19th of November. Can Scotland afford the $140 billion that cessation will cost? Shop immigrants encouraged to set up shops rates free in Liverpool. Car manufacturer Jaguar to build cars outside the UK. John Puxty on Monday, Ludlow in the Welsh marshes. Sweden, 87-year-old woman brutally beaten by gang while trying to defend a puppy. All the best? EU wants migrants to take our jobs. Spanish turned down EU measures and turned to South America. 5 street children die from the cold in communist China. Egypt's churches have pulled out of Islamic-dominated panels, writing Egypt's post-revolution constitution. Thought for the day, Eid, Diwali or Christmas? And finally, farewell to the footheads and the pouncefoots. UK news. The SNP under Alex Salmond, who want independence from Great Britain, could find themselves in a massive fiscal dilemma. In fact, £140 billion worth of fiscal dilemma, a new report has shown. The disastrous and treacherous elections will take place in 2014, and the government say that the economic implications of breakup will feature heavily in a no campaign to the Scottish independence referendum, and former Labour Chancellor Alistair Darling will be joining forces with the coalition in a joint effort to save the 300-year-old union. More than 30% of Scots back split as a third of English and Welsh voters quizzed in the poll say Scotland should go it alone. The Marxist SNP is behind cessation, which proves they are not a nationalist party, and only 1/3 of Scots are behind the change, which might reduce even further when the actual fiduciary cost is known. Small British businesses and even some chain stores are feeling the financial pinch. The discovery of the 10% retail disaster comes to the fore when Europe is in its next bout of financial trouble. Consumers are out there, but the prices of retail goods are so high that they're looking for a cheaper option, such as local markets and the internet. Anger has been sparked in Liverpool over shops in the Anfield, Kensington area being given a release of paying rates in the areas which have been flooded with African, Pakistani and Bangladeshi immigrants. A lone indigenous shop owner commented, "I've had my shop over 30 years, handed down by my father. We never got one release from paying our rates." The free rates are to encourage foreigners to set up shops and businesses along Liverpool's Kensington Prescott Road and Sheil Road areas in a 300-yard radius of the Labour Party base. A World at 8 reporter commented, "They've done the same thing in London and most large towns, and it is now spreading outward to small towns and malls. The worse immigration gets and the worse the financial situation gets, it is forming a perfect storm, not only for local discontent, but a hellhole of multiculturalism. Where to buy or make British will soon be only a dream." Could it be the start of the end for British workers building cars in Britain? Jaguar has announced its £1 billion deal to build its cars at a new car plant in China. Jaguar Land Rover have announced they will start manufacturing vehicles in the world's largest automotive market from 2014, after agreeing a $1.1 billion joint venture with its Chinese partner Chery. A ceremonial foundation stone for the plant was laid in Jiangsu near Shanghai. Indian-owned Tata, owners of Chery, also own a JLR assembly plant in India, but Jiangsu is the largest manufacturing base in China. It makes all the cosmetics, clothes, etc. for overseas. China is also the third largest growth area in JLR overseas market. Jaguar Land Rover employs 24,000 people in the UK, but its overseas ambitions have caused disquiet at Unite. The union's former Secretary-General, Tony Woodley, has expressed concern that the company's growth ambitions are tailored for Brazil, India, Russia and China, and not the UK. Now I hand you over to our John Puxty for his Monday report. Ludlow, border town in the Welsh Marches.
Ludlow, border town in the Welsh Marches. The Shropshire market town of Ludlow lies in a tight bend of the shallow River Thames, situated on a small hill. Ludlow Castle dominates the marketplace. The town is full of medieval and Tudor-style half-timbered houses. The name is derived from Old English Ludlow, which means loud hill. The loud part of the name really refers to the river, which, as the name Thames suggests, was actually a series of rapids. Several weirs were built in the 13th century, which converted what was a noisy and violent river into a series of quiet, contemplative pools. A 13th century English poem referred to the town as Dinham, which is now the name used for a suburb to the west. Dinham is derived from the old Saxon name Dunham, meaning dung-coloured or brown fertile land. By 1306, when the town passed into the hands of Roger Mortimer, 1st Earl of March, there was a population of 2,000 souls. It was an important centre for the sale of wool and cloth. In 1372 it boasted 12 trade guilds, with many wealthy wool merchants, such as Lawrence of Ludlow, who lived at Stokesay Castle just outside of the town. In 1377 a poll tax was levied from 1,172 adult residents, making Ludlow the 35th most populous town in England. St. Lawrence, the parish church, is the largest church in Shropshire, and A. E. Houseman, author of A Shropshire Lad, is buried here. A mile north of the town is Ludlow Racecourse, which unusually has a road running through it in 3 places. When the horses are running, the traffic is stopped. Ludlow is an old English town where you can walk on the bare bones of its history with every step.
Thank you very much, John. European news. Helsingborg. An 88-year-old lady confronted an immigrant gang of 5 who were assaulting a helpless puppy outside a grocery store. The gang then turned their attention to her, beating her to the ground and then brutally kicking and punching her until she started bleeding. The sadistic attack is now sending shockwaves through the once idyllic small town of Helsingborg, southern Sweden. On November the 12th, she was just on her way to the local grocery store in central Helsingborg to buy coffee as she was confronted with the horrific scene. She said, "When I went outside I heard something howling like a small child crying. I continued a few steps and saw a few men standing in front of me. I realised that they were beating a small dog, a black one with a white chest. As the 88-year-old grandmother asked the men, who were speaking a language that she couldn't understand, to stop what they were doing and told them they should be ashamed of themselves. One of them came up to me and hit me on the right side of my head and I fell to the ground. One of the others forced my legs down and then they started kicking me while I was lying down." Helsingborg, which was once an idyllic and sleepy industrial small town in the heart of Sweden's southernmost province, has gone through a rapid transformation to the worst during the last decade. It is now plagued by a surge of gang-related crime and a deteriorating social situation. Euro MPs will call today for an even looser border controls to encourage a fresh wave of immigration into Europe and Britain. They will claim that many areas of the continent face acute labour shortages that need to be filled with foreign workers. Proposals include a relaxation of employment regulations so that millions more migrants, asylum seekers amongst them, can take up jobs within the EU, including the United Kingdom. The Euro MPs also want Brussels to discuss further social security coordination to give migrants greater access to welfare benefits. The proposals last night triggered fears that Britain will be hit by another population surge that'll wreck the government's attempt at restricting annual net immigration. Tim Acker of the Eurosceptic campaign group Get Britain Out said, "While we are in the EU we don't control our borders. Brussels does. This shows they don't care about our unemployed, who face more competition from British jobs due to mass immigration. If you want to get more jobs and control of our borders, we have to quit the EU." Mr Acker added, "Already the UK is seeing net immigration remain over 200,000 per year. This new EU plan will be little consolation for the 1 million young unemployed Brits facing more competition for jobs." Spanish Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy has refused the €75 billion budget cut dictated by Europe and has called it quite unacceptable. Meanwhile, according to World News, the Spanish are looking to Latin America for a way forward out of the EU recession. Spain, which is one of the worst hit with its involvement with the European Union, say that its investments in the early 1990s in South America were very promising and are looking to renew their business relationship with Latin American countries for the future. Good for the Spaniards. 5 street children who tried to escape the bitter cold in communist China have been found dead in a wheelie bin. The boys, found in the city of Bijai in the southwestern Guizhou province, are thought to have been aged around 10. They had tried to light a fire in the metal bin to keep warm in the mountainous region where they lived, but carbon monoxide from the charcoal they used had killed them while they slept. One nationalist commented, "The communists in China are so busy making money and putting on fancy red costume shows and military parades that they don't care about the millions of hungry children in their own country. Communism is a two-headed folly. Keep the people equal in squalor and the leaders' wives in bearskin hats and coats. One thing, if you're a communist or a Muslim, no one will ever question your human rights." Cairo. Egypt's state television quoted Bishop Patrimonius, the interim head of the Christian Coptic Orthodox Church, as saying, "Egypt's 3 churches have withdrawn from the Constitutional Assembly." The country's 3 Christian churches, the Coptic Orthodox Church, the Coptic Catholic Church and the Anglican Church, were represented by only 4 people on the 100-member panel to form Egypt's new post-revolution constitution. The Coptic Orthodox Church's new pope, Tawadros II, said after his election last week that he would reject a constitution if it imposed a religious state in the Muslim-majority country. "A constitution that hints at imposing a religious state in Egypt is absolutely rejected," he told journalists a day after he was chosen as Pope. A draft of the document published last month was heavily criticised by local and international rights groups as failing to protect key rights. President Mohamed Morsi has pledged to allow the Christians equal rights, but the once banned Muslim Brotherhood, to which Morsi belongs, has repeatedly said it wants to gradually impose an Islamic state. Copts, the Middle East's largest Christian community, suffered an increase in attacks that killed dozens of Christians after the overthrow of Mubarak, and many opposed Morsi's elections in June. Thought for the day: Eid, Diwali or Christmas? I'm going to read a short news item that was passed to me by our European reporter, and it has incensed me so much that I'm writing a thought on the whole situation as I see it. And I quote, "Battle over Christmas in Denmark. From How One Local Decision Created a National War on Christmas. Christmas is typically such a festive time, but for one housing association in the Zealand town of Kokkedal, it has, thus far, been anything but. It all started when the association's 9-person board, 5 of whom are Muslim, voted against having a Christmas tree this year. They apparently balked at the estimated 7,000 kroner price of the tree, but earlier had no qualms about spending some 60,000 kroner on a party celebrating the Muslim holiday of Eid. On BBC Radio yesterday they interviewed some Danish citizens on the issue. The first one said that it was a matter of democracy. If the association voted this way, then that was democracy and he was fine with it. Our reporter thought, what if they voted to institute Sharia law in Kokkedal? Would that be fine too? Fact is, no association, no organisation can vote to contract themselves out of the laws of the country. This case clearly was discrimination against Christian beliefs. On the plus side, it does appear to be a wake-up call to the Danes about Islamic supremacism and separatism. OK, seething over with now, but doesn't it seem odd that this should be coming from a batch of countries that started the Germanic idea of St. Nicholas, trees and presents? In fact, if we were just celebrating the birth of Jesus, we would not celebrate it until about March, I believe. There's been some trouble in this country over Christmas for the last 10 years. Some of it is our own fault, us Brits. We have allowed Christmas to become a non-religious festival and a purely commercial one. We have tried to jump on the American bandwagon of toys, festivity and families, but have sadly missed by a mile. We Brits are simply not Americans. We are English, with all the faults that entails. Americans, for the most part, are derived from Europe, a combination of northern and southern Europeans who celebrate Christmas in varying forms that have stood the test of time. In the UK, I remember Christmas as a family time, or rather a step-family time in my case. I had food that was not imported all the year round, and a satsuma was a real treat. Crackers and presents and no tensions. It seemed that after the World War II, people were grateful to have survived to enjoy Christmas, even though many did not have much or any money to do so. Nowadays, most people have the money to buy a turkey or presents, even though they think they have not. Quite ordinary people with ordinary incomes seem to think they should spend a minimum of £500 per child or adult and think they're hard up if this cannot be attained. Celeb magazines and even ordinary papers fill their colour supplements with stupid and outrageous gifts that only rich families in the real world can afford. The guilt trip over whether you can buy little so-and-so a huge electric whatever with all the bells and whistles weighs more heavily than the celebration of Christmas itself. Now we in the UK make nothing for ourselves, so the months before Christmas the entire time is filled with the importation of various and many luxuries from mainly India and China, who have no cultural bias towards any religion when it comes to making money. Our greed keeps these countries afloat all the year round, preparing for our Christmas, and yet within our own country this festival is assuming a second-rate position with its own people. It is our own councillors who allow foreign people to be voted on, and as with everything they also allow themselves to be outvoted when it comes to displaying the main event of the Christian calendar in public. For years small towns and villages have been prevented from ringing church bells and putting up religious decorations and lights in favour of elf and safety, reindeers and balls. The nativity scene is actually nowhere to be seen anymore. The Sally Army are prevented from performing in a large group owing to elf and safety, supposedly, although how one man can blow a trumpet and sound like a host of angels I really do not know. But we have allowed it. I asked way back in Surrey 3 years ago why the large presence of the band of the Sally Army was down to one man, and he said somewhat resignedly it was down to the council, who didn't think a large group was conducive to elf and safety. This is obviously coming from the same mindset that allows hordes of ragheads and pantaloon bastards to gather in their hundreds and shout abuse. Wow, I can really see that rule working for some. My problem is that the powers that be obviously want to recreate Saudi in our green and pleasant land. They want Eid to be celebrated by all as a sign of our acceptance of what they class as inevitable or rather out of their hands. Diwali is the same, and no, I personally do not want to run around semi-naked in November pouring red paint over all and sundry. It's simply not Christian or even human in my book. These so-called religious festivals of other cultures belong where the other cultures belong, in their countries and not in my country. I do not object to their customs being carried out in their countries, so why we Brits are so accommodating as to decimate and reduce our religious festival to a money-making 2-month binge. This reduces Christmas in foreigners' eyes, as to the old adage, if you cannot value yourself, why expect anyone else to? And we Brits do not value our own Christmas in the spirit it was intended. The media is full of warnings of family rows and stresses over Christmas. Now that really makes one look forward to it, doesn't it? This additional so-called stress mixed with the inevitable money worries and whether you can provide a meal similar to a feast in the time of Henry VIII on an income certainly not on a par with good old Henry, kids throwing tantrums because they haven't got what the brat next door has, and the whole essence of Christmas is totally destroyed. Align this with all the sodding pictures of happy families, beautiful groomed and glamorous mothers and daughters, smiling babies, and everything pricey in Tinseltown, and even I am about to throw in the towel. Now somewhere in all of this is a media-based army, telling you that you have to buy everything made in China, do not go to church, stick in front of the TV, all that holiday, stay in your house in fact and drink yourself stupid when the kids are in bed. Meanwhile, don't you dare object when posters for Eid and Diwali are put up, cards for the same advertised on the web when you cannot get a nativity card to save your life, and never ever question the fact that the decorations in your town or village get even more acceptable to other cultures. The same media and companies promote Halloween because it is an anti-Christian ceremony and does not promote togetherness or Christianity in any dangerous form. It is also a money spinner for the third world in its awful and shoddy costumes and gewgaws. But us Brits seem to love it and pay it more attention than Christmas, which just shows how propaganda works both in education and the media. The truth is we must start celebrating Christmas for what it is, a family time and a time for thought and luxuries you do not get through the year. So many times I've heard the phrase from my progeny, "Oh, I want to spend Christmas at my home with whomever, see you after or before." So much so that I thought this year I would not put up the tree. Well, sod that. The tree is going up where all can see it. If my family come round, OK. My grandbabies are all grown up and doing their own thing. Have you noticed that youngsters always do their own thing around Christmas and never during the year? I will dress up and my better half and we will drink to each other and absent family and friends and of course the party, because without the British National Party the festival of Christmas would vanish altogether. Bums up, mateys. And finally, got a funny name? Traditional surnames are becoming extinct. Farewell to the Footheads and the Pauncefoots. What happened to the Pauncefoots? It's no good asking the Blythewoods, they've gone as well. Many names passed down from generation to generation of Brits for hundreds of years are now becoming extinct, a new book claims. Names such as Macmain, Blythewood, Foothead and Pouncefoot are amongst those thought to have died out in Britain, and researchers believe thousands more have vanished. Others are on the brink of extinction, used by just a handful of individuals. Debbie Kennett from the Guild said, "There is a continual process by which some names thrive and some don't. The inheritance of surnames is purely random." An analysis by Mrs Kennett in her new book, The Surnames Handbook, has put the number of names now in use in Britain and Ireland up at 500,000, half of which have been introduced in the past century as a result of immigration. This presenter says that if you want to name the causes of immigration over the last 100 years, try the last 50 years, where there is a massive increase of immigration from totally different and alien cultures. Soon we will all be called Patel or Mohammed. You have been listening to The World at 8. I am Lynn Mozar and I wish you all a very good night.